Welcome to the Oasis Discovery and Asset Management Review. We're going to look a little bit more in depth today at how this discovery process and the subsequent asset management allows you to be more in control and have a better handle over the environment as a whole. So we're going to start here on the Network Discovery Configuration page. I'm going to talk just briefly about some of the things you see here, such as being able to set a distributed discovery, run this on intervals. You can set a schedule for your discovery to execute, and then we use a variety of different protocols, and that's why I'm beginning with this page. It's important to understand that not every device will be able to be reached in the exact same way as every other device. In some cases, we need to use different protocols to achieve that full picture, full view, and data collection for each device. So we run these with a variety of things in mind in order to get us to that functionality. This allows us to collect the most information available. The next thing I'd like to look at is how you kick off that initial discovery. So we start from a network discovery panel that allows us to configure those network addresses that we want to target where we believe that we'll be able to pick up all of the devices in the environment. So we plug these in here utilizing this panel, which allows us, if you look at the left, there are some controls. There's a pencil and a trash can, and then you can activate and deactivate these once you've entered them. When you click on the pencil, or if you use the Add Subnet at the top, it gives you the opportunity to enter those network addresses in that you want to scan. So once that's done, then you simply execute the discovery using the Start Discovery button, and on the top right, it's then going to show you once that completes. It's important to note that a discovery can take a range of time depending on the size of the environment. In some cases, it may be as short as 20 minutes, and in other cases, it may be as long as 4 hours, depending on the amount of devices and the amount of assets as a whole, or instances, which we'll talk about in other videos. Once the network discovery is executed and you implement your seed file, you then have the opportunity to go out and begin to look at the details that are collected around each of the instances found. We're going to do that from our dashboard page, looking at a dashboard called Network Discovery Results. This dashboard is a table of information that shows you the individual details for each instance that was discovered. As we begin to scroll to the right, you'll see additional columns of data showing the further detail that's collected, including the individual responses for different protocols and the different information available for each of those. This is a great place to point out that each of these columns of data is sortable and filterable from the top header row, as well as being able to do a search from the top right side in a free search that looks for that content anywhere in any cell. This functions very much like Excel. It also gives you the ability to export to CSV so that you can further dive into the data or continue to do additional research, or use this to combine the data with other data points and begin to do deeper analysis. Next, we're going to take a look at the seed file. And from the seed file listing, you can see what was successful and unsuccessful in the various protocols, as well as a gray icon where it wasn't executed or isn't turned on. You notice here that we've got some options to add devices. We have actions under each instance that allow you to rediscover or take additional actions against that individual instance. You can upload a full seed file. You can start the full discovery from here. And this gives you a quick place to see exactly what made it into your discovery and what protocols were successful in that process. Notice on the far right, you have a completed status. So along with this completed status, you have the option to flip the toggle to show pending only, and that's going to show you the devices that failed to discover via SNMP or other status. This is something that also feeds into a compliance page and an asset summary page that we'll look at in a minute. Next, we're going to look at how this information populates the Oasis CMDB. This is an automated population process. It doesn't require manual intervention, and it's available under the ITIL section of Oasis. In the CMDB, it automatically categorizes the work based on the categorized groupings that Oasis presents. So we have services, groups, applications, devices, components, on and on. So under each one of these, you can see that you can expand this with a plus sign, and it's going to give you a list of what those instances are under that particular category. So here I'm going to expand host. Notice the list of hosts shown here, and each of those blue entries is a pivot point that will take you to the dashboard associated to that specific instance. Now let's go in and click on one of these instances and pivot over to the dashboard that comes by default in Oasis for the individual instance. In this case, it's a host dashboard, and it's going to give us the specific information that pertains to that type of host. So a switch, a router, a server, all may have different vital criteria, and those are predefined in these dashboards. These dashboards are also fully configurable by the individual user and by the administrator to customize the look and feel to be exactly what works for the environment that you're managing. So here you see that we have in the top left corner the instance details, and that tells me all of the pertinent information that you saw basically in the network discovery dashboard prior. We can take a look at the diagrams, and this is going to show me the connectivity. And I'll be able to look at that and see exactly what's going on. Note the colored icons that indicate there are active events associated to those devices. I can hover over the lines and I can see pertinent details about those individual instances and the relationship to the instance they're connected to. I can zoom in on my chart so that it's easier for me to see what's going on, and I can also expand these, and I can expand what's visible on the chart as well as expand the widget size by dragging and dropping, and that gives me some capability to full screen this if I really need to do a deep dive diagnostic into what's happening in my connectivity. So in this case, I've exploded it, I've blown it up, you can kind of see what's there. I can click on an instance, it gives me the pertinent details around that instance, and then it also gives me a list of the relationship information. That relationship information is automatically populated in Oasis. It's not a manual effort, and it gives you the information that tells what it belongs to, what it's composed of, everything associated to that particular instance, including the groups that it's part of. So this gives you, in a very quick, at a glance perspective, a way to see exactly what's going on in your environment. Then you can click on each one of these for additional details, and it shows you exactly what is made up of that particular grouping for that device. And you see here that we can scroll up and down on this listing and see the various different things. Now let's go ahead and navigate over and take a look at the conversation data. We can also see all the conversations that occur from instance to instance, and we track those from conversation and listening port perspective. With that information, we can begin to get a better picture of what's connected to what, what's talking to what, and where the communications are. This also becomes hugely advantageous when you're talking about having that information available for security issues, which is another offering in the solution that we look at in a separate video. Here you see the different items listed for server IP, client IP, service port, protocol, etc. These items give you the opportunity to really identify what's connected to what and what's sharing information with what in your environment, as well as what's listening in the environment, so that you know anything that shows up that's not normal. One of the first things that Oasis is able to do post-discovery is start to identify normal. That way, when something abnormal occurs, we can indicate that very, very quickly and let you know exactly what's happening in your environment. It's important to note that just like any other table in Oasis, these columns are all sortable and filterable by using the header column information, and they are searchable by the search in the top right corner. There's also a date range option in the far top right corner of the Oasis panel itself, and that can be used as well to expand the date range for the information viewed. Let's go over and look at our NIST compliance section, where any compliance object can be configured in the system, and any information contributed via Oasis, either via discovery or thresholding, can be applied to that to help keep you in compliance. There's an asset summary section to this panel, and this asset summary section is very powerful. If we start in the top left, it shows you from your inventory, your discovery that was done, how things were categorized based on the information found in that discovery. So it breaks it out by vendor. There's a section for class name. Those class names are pre-configured in the system to help organize your inventoried items or your assets or instances. From here, let's go ahead and go to the Discovery Delta page, and this is going to show us the variation from inventory to inventory or discovery to discovery with the CMDB snapshot. It's got a date range setter. You can select the window of time you want to look at. You can see what was added or removed, and you can select or deselect different categories of information to show in your display. So in this case, we're looking at components. There were 8,256 components, and each of these then has a link that's going to pop up some further information and give us a pivot. You can see over a variety of date ranges the different things that have changed. In this case, you're seeing software installation, so this can be used to also maintain records of software patching and those kinds of things as well. In this case, if we go to a 30-day date range, I'm going to be able to see that I have some server devices. So in this case, here are some servers, and I'm able to see when those were added or removed, in this case added. And each of these pivot points would give me the opportunity to drill in and get more detailed information. So in clicking on one of these items, it's going to give me a pop-up that shows me everything associated to this device that was changed. So we'll see a window here that gives us the pertinent information in expandable panes. So we have the affected parents, we have the properties associated, and if there are connected to options, those would be displayed as well. This gives you a single point to go to in order to understand and establish exactly what's being maintained in your environment and what may or may not have dropped out of your environment. So we've looked at what information is obtained and how that information is retained in the system, and we've looked a little bit at how the consumption is done. But this right here is one of the most powerful things, which is using the group option in Oasis. This gives you the ability to build groups both dynamically and statically to contain those devices so that you can do reporting, dashboards, all kinds of feature work against that information without having to manually go in and populate it every time. So here we're going to look at what it means to have a static group first of all. And when you set this up, you set your criteria working your way from the top to the bottom of the form using manual option. This is going to be a topology group. Where it says host, there is a drop down that you can use that will allow you to select from a variety of options. And in that list, you can select whatever the type is that you want. And once you've selected that, then you can either search for the filter by name or by partial name, or you can just click search and it's going to return everything that's associated to that particular category. So if I pick switch, for instance, and I, instead of searching for a specific switch name, simply click list available assets, it shows me everything in the system that's listed as a switch. I can select all of those en masse with the add all assets at the bottom, or I can click the one green plus sign next to the instance I want and click save, and I've now constructed my static group. The other thing I can do is create a dynamic group that will change as the instances change automatically without manual intervention. So I'm going to set some rules that say to look for specific things such as class name host and vendor string like Linux. So when we do a discovery, anything that comes up that has a class type of host and is Linux as the type is going to get automatically added to this group, and it's going to report if you've used this group to build a dashboard or to build a report or whatever you're doing with that information. It's automatically going to add those as it finds them in the discovery. So we've taken a few minutes, we've looked at how the discovery is processed, how the assets are retained, and a little bit about how the assets can be consumed. You see that there's a deep level of detail collected with each discovery, and the next phases will begin to talk through the detail at which those can be exploded and exploited into different views.